Okay, my friends, welcome to Yerushalaim. Mayor Eisenman here. I'm sure many of you have been on my tours, and if not, of course, you're invited to join when things get better. I'm sure many of you would love to be in Yerushalaim now at this time. Unfortunately, you cannot make it due to the terrible Corona COVID-19 outbreak, which is preventing us from travel. Nonetheless, I'm going to do my best to bring you a little bit from Yerushalayim, a little bit of a taste of Yerushalayim during this difficult time. Of course, behind me, we can see the Temple Mount, Har HaBayit. We can see Har HaZeitim in the distance over there. And as we stand there in the heart of the old city of Yerushalayim, we can see Yeshivat HaKotel. We can see the apartments and the buildings and the homes and the shuls and everything here about Yerushalayim. And today we're dealing with an unbelievable story, an unbelievable question. We're going to understand something amazing. What is the connection between the cholera outbreak in Yerushalayim of 154 years ago in 1866 and between Lag Baomer, which is beginning tomorrow, and between building Yerushalayim? What is the connection between cholera outbreak 1866, Lag Baomer, and building Yerushalayim? Come with me as we travel around the city to hear the answer to this question. Next stop is Shar Shem, the gate leading north of the old city, Damascus Gate in English. Come with me as we hear the answer to this question. Let's go. Okay, guys, we have finally arrived to Shar Shem, about a 10-minute walk from where we started earlier. And we arrived here at Damascus Gate, as it's known in English, or Bab el-Amud in Arabic. Today, in 2020, Tafshin Pei, and this gate is primarily used by the Muslim Arab population of Jerusalem. You can see them coming in and out of the gate on this early Ramadan morning here today. Probably the most used pedestrian gate of the old city. The gate leading directly north towards Shem, about 50 miles from here, Damascus Gate, or all the way out to Damascus, Shar Shem in Hebrew. I'd like to take us back in time. Let's go back in time a little bit, 154 years ago, to this time of year, Lag Baomer, Tafresh Chavav, Lag Baomer of 1866. If you would have been here that Lag Baomer morning of 1866, you would have seen a different scene. You would have seen hundreds and thousands of Jews leaving Shar Shem. They're coming out of Shar Shem, and they're going north towards Rehov Shimon HaTzadik. We can see it here now where those umbrellas are just behind the traffic light. That is called Rehov Derech Shem. That street leads out towards the kever of Shimon HaTzadik. And these hundreds and thousands of Jews are coming out. The winter in Jerusalem, the winter of 1865, 1866, Tafresh Chavav, was a very, very difficult winter. Hundreds, if not thousands, of Jews lost their life in a terrible cholera outbreak. And now the spring is finally here. It's a beautiful day. And the Jews are moving. They're coming out of Shar Shem. Don't forget, back then, 1866, understand where we're featured. Most of Jerusalem already is Jewish. Jerusalem has a Jewish majority. All of Jerusalem is situated within the old city walls of today. So we have over 10,000 Jews living in Jerusalem. All of them situated within the old city walls, just recovering from a terrible cholera outbreak. Much of what we call today, referred to as the Muslim Quarter, the area near Shar Shem, near Damascus Gate, was Jewish families are living there. And this morning of Lag BaOmer, it's a beautiful spring day like today. The Jews are coming out. They're heading north via the road of Derech Shem towards Shimon HaTzadik. Obviously, Lag BaOmer and the connection to Shimon Bar Yochai is very well known, but many of us don't know that back then it was obviously much more difficult to travel all the way up north to the Galil, to the village of Meron, to the kever of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. However, Yerushalayim has its own Shimon, Shimon HaTzadik. Shimon HaTzadik, the Kohen Gadol during the time of Bayit Sheni. We have our own Shimon. And the Jews of Yerushalayim used to make the Hilula, the big celebration on Lag BaOmer that would take place in Yerushalayim at Kever Shimon HaTzadik till today, on a regular year at least, not this year because of the Corona, of course, but a regular year you would see tens of thousands of people coming to Shimon HaTzadik on Lag BaOmer to celebrate. Those who can't make the trek all the way up to Meron. And back then, 154 years ago, that was the main event, certainly for the Jews of Yerushalayim. And they're on their way to Shimon HaTzadik. We have fellow Hirschberg, who arrives in Yerushalayim in the 1870s, describes the beautiful celebration that would take place. Young boys would get their first haircut. There's dancing, there's singing, there's live music, there's food. Everything that would take place at Hilula is taking place there. So let's go back in time, 1866. The square looks very different. We see hundreds and thousands of Jews coming out, walking north towards Shimon HaTzadik. But the keen eye would have noticed somebody was missing. That would have been very shocking. Come over here, I have a picture of a Jew, of a Yid, my grandfather's great-grandfather, a Jew, Yoel Moshe Solomon. See the picture up against the backdrop of the Churva synagogue, which was already standing then in 1866. It had just been completed 2 years prior. He was very involved in managing the Ashkenazi community. He was very close to Reb Shmuel Salan, the Rav of Yerushalaim at that time. And the keen eye would have noticed that he's not here. He's not here. His three sons aren't here. His wife, Ruma Salman, isn't here. All of Yerushalayim is here. Everyone is leaving to celebrate. They're leaving Shar Shechem. They're on their way to Shimon HaTzadik. But Yoel Moshe Salman is not here. Where is he? And what does he have in mind? That you can follow me up the road towards Shar Yafo to our next stop. We're going to go up the road. We're going to figure out why was Yoel Moshe Salman not over here. Friends, we are back. We left off at Shar Shechem. We're now back at Shar Yafo at Jaffa Gate, and we're dealing with the question, where is Yoel Moshe Salman? Why is Yoel Moshe Salman on that Lag Baomer day of 1866, when the entire Jewish population, most of the Jewish population, is leaving north through Shar Shechem to go to Shimon HaTzadik for the Ilula? Why is Yoel Moshe Salman, as you can see, a leader of the community? Why is he leaving Shar Yafo? Why is he seen leaving Shar Yafo? And the answer to that question, my friends, relates, of course, to the cholera outbreak. Several months prior, in Cheshvan, October of 1866, Yoel Moshe Salman, in a span of 3 weeks, sits Shiva twice for his father and for his mother. And at the same time, his grandmother dies. And he witnesses, as a child, he witnesses the growth of the old city of Yerushalaim, of the Jewish community of Jerusalem. He sees the community grow from several thousand to over 10,000 people. They are now most of the city of Yerushalaim. But he also realizes at the same time that the overcrowdedness of the old city of Yerushalaim, the thousands of Jewish families that are living one on top of another, in very poor sanitary conditions, that's what led to the death of his father and his mother, and hundreds, if not thousands, of his friends and community members. There's an entire section on Har Zeitim devoted to those killed in the cholera outbreak. And Yoel Moshe Salman realizes, if they want to keep living and expanding Yerushalayim, he cannot spend that Lag Baomer going towards Shimon HaTzadik to the Hilula. He leaves Shar Yafo, goes down Jaffa Road, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with from your trips to Yerushalayim, and heads down where today the trains run on Jaffa Road. He heads down, and he has a plan to expand Yerushalayim. Come with me as we go to Nachalat Shiva, the neighborhood that he founded, and understand how that plan took place. Let's go to Nachalat Shiva. Okay, my friends, we have now walked from Jaffa Gate, where we left off last time. We have come here. We have made the 15-minute walk. We arrive here in the heart of town of Yerushalayim, the heart of the modern city of Yerushalayim. We can see some of the older buildings that were built here in the 1860s, 1870s. We can see the shuls that were started here in the 1870s and 1880s, some of the first shuls built outside the old city walls. We can see around us some of the taller modern buildings that have been built in the last 50 years in Yerushalayim. However, if we go back to our story in the 1860s, 1866, at that time, the spring of 1866, this was a vegetable garden. And Yoel Moshe Salman has not gone with the rest of the community north outside Shar Shechem to Shimon HaTzadik. He has gone west outside Shar Yafo on the road leading to Jaffa, the road leading to the port. And Yoel Moshe Salman arrives in this field, and he enters the field, and he starts walking around this very area we are standing now. And as he's walking around, the Arab falachim, the Arab farmers, look at him and they start yelling at him in Arabic. Jew, what are you doing here? Yahudi, what are you doing? And Yoel Moshe Salman, who's 28 years old, speaks perfect Arabic, grows up in Yerushalayim, very familiar with the Arab mentality. He looks at the Arabs and he tells them, I'm here to buy this field. And his friends thought he was crazy. What does a Jew need to buy a vegetable garden? A small field on the road to Jaffa, 15-minute walk outside the old city of Yerushalaim. And they thought Yoel Moshe Salman was just making up an excuse so the Arabs shouldn't bother him too much. However, they watch as they begin to negotiate, and Yoel Moshe negotiates with the Arabs a price, how much he's going to pay per meter for the field. He then proceeds and he tells the Arabs where he lives in the old city, and he invites them to come visit him that night in the old city to finalize the agreement. And indeed, that afternoon, Yoel Moshe gets together with 6 of his friends, and they form together this collective Nachalat Shiva, the portion of the 7. And Yoel Moshe already that day signs with the Arabs an agreement, and he purchases this field. 2 to 3 years later, already at this site, Yoel Moshe Salman has already built a home over here, and he has started from the first neighborhoods outside the old city walls. It would eventually grows into Yerushalaim of today. Come with me to the next stop to see where Yoel Moshe Salman built that first house, an area today known as Beit Yoel. Come with me. Standing here now, we left the alleyways of Nachalat Shiva. We're standing off Jaffa Road where the train tracks run from Shar Yafo, from Jaffa Gate, out towards the central bus station. Of course, back then, this was the main road that led from Yerushalayim, from the old city of Yerushalayim, out towards Jaffa, out towards Yafo. At this very spot, Yoel Moshe Salman builds his house, eventually comes to live here with his wife Fruma and his 8 children. And let me show you an unbelievable picture of what the house looked like before this modern building was built 50 years ago. I'm holding here now a book that was written for 100 years since the passing of Yoel Moshe Salman. It was written a couple of years ago. And in this book, we can see a picture. This is the Salman family standing outside Beit Yoel. We can see over here Yoel Moshe Salman, his wife Fruma, many of his children and their grandkids. Over here, we can see my great-grandmother, Chana Salman, eventually marries Yosef Eisenman, Chana Eisenman. So at this site, Yoel Moshe Salman builds his house. He lives here. And I think we'll just end up with this powerful message, this unbelievable message, how Yoel Moshe Salman and the Jews of Yerushalayim take the terrible cholera outbreak of 1866, the terrible tragedy of losing his mother, his father, and his grandmother. And he uses that as an impetus, as a push, as a drive to build Yerushalayim. And indeed, from that terrible, terrible plague, Yerushalayim is built. Today, Yerushalayim, due to his actions and many people like him, is the largest Jewish city in the world. And I think there's a lesson for all of us. We can take these difficult times of the corona outbreak that we're witnessing right now, and we can use it as a drive, as a push to achieve more and better things. Thank you for listening. May we merit to see Yerushalayim fully rebuilt in our days. And may we see an end to this terrible outbreak. Take care. May it in Yerushalayim.